So today, we are changing the way we engage with nightlife businesses throughout the city by launching CURE, the acronym CURE. We're bringing together NYPD, SBS, Commissioner Kim and his entire team in the Office of Nightlife to improve public safety.
Good morning, everybody. Here we go. Coffee and donuts already. Tom Joyce, $20. Shout out to you, brother. Good morning. He says, good morning. Fresh coffee in the squad. And then apparently, I don't know if he did some time working with the British. Tea, too. Amazing. So I don't know who's drinking tea, but I like tea at night sometimes. But good morning. Hey, how's your weekend, brother? What's going down?
Yeah, good. Busy weekend, brother. Busy weekend. You know, as always, it was a good weekend, and did a lot of stuff with the family, so I was happy about that. Very accomplished weekend. So here we are, Monday, right? We have what appears to be an extortion racket, an extortion influence peddling racket in the NYPD. It's something we've been talking about for a while, right? It's something that, and as time passes, the media drowns it out, right? You don't hear about this a lot. You don't hear about what's going on and the investigation that's done. So we don't have the inner workings of the investigation. So we're just going to bring out the facts that have been reported in the media and give our opinion on it. So that's what we're going to do. What has recently come out in the media is that 311 calls, communities, particularly communities where these bars and these restaurants that have traditionally been plagued with violence and other types of quality of life issues, that these bars, whenever the community calls 311, whenever they think something's going on at particular bars and restaurants, the 311 calls are either immediately marked or never answered and then marked later and nobody comes. And this article from Tina Moore, it's, while it's objective opinions from people, which is what this podcast is going to be, we're gonna bring you back in time. We're gonna go back in time. How did we get here to where the community's saying that basically the NYPD is operating a peddling influence racket?
So what's peculiar to me is the 311 system is very vital to the inner workings of the NYPD. And I remember, I think it was about a year ago, up to 18 months ago, John and we started to hear some grumblings within the police department, how the emphasis that was put on 311s from the NYPD, especially at Comstat. So in my career working as a special operations lieutenant, I was at Comstat constantly in the South Bronx, and 301s was always an issue. It would come up, and it was always a relation. It would be discussed about when there were shootings. And sometimes when there's a shooting incident, 911 calls are obviously, a certain diameter of the area or a certain radius would be looked at to see what kind of 911 calls might be related. But what would also come up is 301 calls, because 301 calls sometimes are very intricate and have a lot of information and preface potential violence. So, for instance, we would see a lot of times in the South Bronx, there were shootings that emanated from gambling games that would happen in the street, dice games, noise complaints, parties, things like that. And those are the types of complaints usually get reported to 301. A noise complaint, maybe a car parking a block driveway, an unauthorized block party. So those type of things get looked at to see if there was a response and what type of response was there by the police department. Something that could be prefaced to prevent just crowds or things like that that potentially lead to shootings. So, as I said, about 18 months ago, maybe about a year ago, you and I both heard the importance that was put on 301s to actually have a sergeant respond. And there was a timeline that these 301s had to be answered within 30 minutes or within an hour. and something that was coming up at Comstat. So to me, it's peculiar that they put such an emphasis, and yet while this is happening, 301s allegedly are being ignored. It's something that John and I reported on about a year ago, talking about these 301s, that if this is actually happening, these allegations, this racketeering operation, that there could be a lot of hands involved. The special operations lieutenants could be knowingly or unknowingly involved. Police officers could be knowingly and unknowingly involved. But sure, there's no doubt about it. Commanding officer would know. So, John, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so one, I think it's like fair to go even further back, and I agree with you 100% that where you're the 311 system, or even like the 911 calls of the noise complaints emanating from bars and restaurants. Those are the precursor to violence. And traditionally, if there was a problem-plagued restaurant or bar, those would get paid special attention in the NYPD, right? So those would get paid special attention. But for years and years and years, in certain commands, there's been a few names that have been popped up constantly inside of the New York City Police Department, where they are interacting with a few politicians in, when we relate to the Bronx, when we talk about Uptown, when you talk about figures like Fernando Mateo, Jimmy Rodriguez, when you mention name Ed Caban, Jimmy Caban, when you mention these names, there's always been this grumbling amongst cops that, hey, if I go to this restaurant and we did a march program there, me and my CO are getting paid visits by congressmen, by councilmen, and by members of the NYPD saying to lay off the business. And that is the appearance of impropriety. Now, does that mean that something's wrong? Maybe, maybe not, right? Because at the end of the day, as a police department, should we be helping to foster a safe environment for the public? Yes. Should we? But we also are helping to foster a safe, friendly environment with the business community too. So it's a weird thing there, right? It's a weird dynamic, because one could sit there and say, well, that's the job of the NYPD. They should be doing that. That's community policing. And I'll agree to a point. And when that point is crossed is when those same restaurants and bars have violence emanating from them. And at that point, there was something that we did in the NYPD. It was a multi-agency response. It was done throughout the whole city and the state. It involved the state liquor authority. It involved the Department of Buildings. It involved the fire department. It involved the New York City Police Department. And sometimes these inspections were friendly, right? You were just doing a random inspection. But most often, those inspections were sparked from acts of violence, from numerous community complaints. The police department, the commanding officer wasn't going, you know what? John opened the bar there. I don't like John. Let's run a march operation on him every month. It wasn't that. There was enforcement-related problems to that bar or restaurant. And guys like Eric Adams, and a lot of people and a lot of the business owners, obviously as a business owner, if you're getting summons, you're not going to be a big fan of this program, right? If you're having problems at your bar, you're not going to be a big fan, because you could lose your liquor license. You're going to get numerous summonses that are going to have to be paid. So that appearance that's there, that appearance of impropriety, is the reason why cops aren't allowed to do security in New York City in the NYPD, why they're not allowed to do security work on or off duty, and also are not allowed to be in what we like an off-duty employment setting, even through the department. Why? Because it's almost like I'm paying the New York City Police Department, or I'm paying this cop to ensure that regardless of what happens, there'll never be enforcement activity against my bar or my restaurant. So, Eric, could you break down for everybody like what the March program was and your opinions on it, and like what you think about it?
Absolutely. So I'll preface it with a comment here. Great comment by Brian Johnson. Brian, thank you so much. So obviously, a former member of the NYPD says, we did a march operation on Latin Quarter after the Plaxico Burgess shooting. Good Lord, both the 17th. What's that?
Plaxico Burress, the New York Giant.
Yeah, Plaxico Burgess. Yep. What did I say, Burgess?
Yeah.
That's right. Plaxico Burgess. It's shooting. Good Lord, both the 17th and Manhattan CO. No, I'm sorry, Manhattan North CO were there to make sure every possible summons was written. So, great comment. I think that's important to note. That's why earlier when I had prefaced this 301 operation, talking about how the commanding officer is an integral part in these operations, and the commanding officer is highly aware of what's going on because he has to report on the 301s. 301s get audited by the commanding officer along with the special operations lieutenant, mostly on the special operations lieutenant, but the commanding officer has to be aware of it at CompStat. So let's talk about the March program. So it's an acronym. The NYPD loves acronyms. It stands for a multi assisted response coordinated at hotspots, right? So what does this mean? This means that the police department, along with the fire department, Department of Health, and different agencies coordinate, Department of Buildings sometimes, coordinate what's called the March operation, where it would be an unannounced visit at a bar, a venue, a nightclub, some type of nightlife, maybe it could even be a restaurant, where there may have been complaints of loud music. Obviously, there's music there, but loud music disturbing the neighborhood. Could be the way they have the lights coming out of the bar. Maybe it's disturbing people from sleeping. Richie O put multi-AZ. Yes, it's early. Multi-AZ response coordinated hotspots. Community hotspots, right? So when the NYPD, along with the fire department, these agencies respond unannounced at a location because of complaints, and a lot of times these complaints are also emanating, and sometimes these nightlife locations do have violence and even shootings. So I've been to CompStat numerous times where they had a shooting at a bar, a restaurant, nightlife location in the Bronx, and they would put it up on the screen. You would see the location. They would talk about a shooting that was there, the violence. And what's important is the timeline going back, right? So if we talk about a shooting at a bar or restaurant, we have to go back and say, okay, what type of complaints were there? And what was the response by the NYPD to prevent any violence? And that's where this multi-agency response community hotspot comes into play, that when you're getting complaints, to do an unannounced visit to prevent any violence at a particular location. And unfortunately, sometimes it's there as a follow-up if there is violence that was not prevented, such as a shooting. And the multi-agencies respond, and then if the summonses need to be issued, summonses would be issued, and now it holds the representatives or the owners of a bar accountable and to answer for those summonses and have a communication with the commanding officer of the precinct to stop whatever complaints are going on there, to stop any potential violence at a particular location. It's not, in my opinion, it's not done to shut the business down. It's done to correct issues. And unfortunately, sometimes it is followed up by what we call nuisance abatements or such, and places do get shut down. But there is things in place to stop that. And that March program does stop that by issuing summonses, by affecting arrest, to stop complaints, to stop issues that are going on in a particular location. A long time ago, you also had, now they don't have it anymore, you need a cabaret license. Also, you know, if people were dancing, they actually had to have a license for that. And the reason why that goes back to the times of Happy Land when they had a fire. So make sure that everything's up to fire code. Make sure that there's not large crowds hanging outside, obstructing the sidewalk. Make sure that we're not emanating violence. And that was centered around and centric around the March program. It ultimately was to prevent violence and to also have a relationship with the community and stop complaints at a location and actually figure out why.
Yeah. So, and just another point of reference, we have Rob Nappy on here. Rob Nappy says, I was the commanding officer of the 68th Precinct in Bay Ridge. From 1999 to 2000, I had 125 bars and restaurants. 97% were never a problem. The problem spots with fights and lots of 311s were targets of my March operation because you were partaking in the core mission of public safety. This is a huge public safety problem. Like, we're running these March programs not only to protect life in the bar, of the people in the bar, of the workers in the bar, of the people attending the bar, of the troublemakers in the bar, but also the people on the street, the people that live in the neighborhood. So you're trying to prevent issues, stabbing, shootings, fights. You know, Bay Ridge, well known for fights, right? You know, you might have interacted with me a few times out there, Rob. You know, you never know. But this is
Wicked Monk. That was a great spot.
Wicked Monk, Million. Like, that's a very heavy restaurant bar location at that time. Even at that time, it was, forget about it. That was one of the hot spots. Our only thing close to that is Manhattan, right? So now what happens is Adams comes into office, and he's, you know, they're dogging on the March program. They're like, oh, the March program's no good. Jack, if you could get that ready of Eric Adams talking about the March program, right? And so when you look at that, you say, well, if there was any type of influence there, it could, the influence could happen at the top, right? Because you send me or Eric there, or even Rob Nappy, because he's the precinct CO. Even as the precinct CO, what does he need to do to conduct a March operation? He needs to write a 49, which is the reason he's conducting this March operation, the location where it's going to go, right? And so that 49 makes its way up to the patrol bureau and ultimately to 1PP. So if these business leaders or these businesses are friendly with the people up top, oftentimes what would happen, especially in precincts like that or uptown or in the Bronx, what would happen is there were problems at that location. Now you basically reported all the way up to the top of the NYPD, and these March operations weren't supposed to be, oh, hey, clean up, make sure you're not violating the fire code, make sure you're serving clean food and clean alcohol, and there's not problems in your precinct, and people aren't using drugs in the bathroom, and there's not drug paraphernalia and underage people in your bar. No, they're supposed to be a surprise, and you're supposed to see how this business operates when on a day-to-day level, when you just show up there, if you're a participant, if you're a patron, like you're just going to go to the bar. They were supposed to be a surprise, but oftentimes, you know, a lot of people that conducted these operations, I'm sure this happened to you, Eric. I know it's happened to me, and it's happened to a lot of other people. You show up at a bar that's been plagued with problems, plagued with it. You know, when you walk in there, you're going to run into issues, right? There's going to be numerous codes that you're going to see. And you walk in and the music's low and nobody's there and they're sitting there waiting for you. And you're like, how the hell did that happen? Oh, I did a 49. I sent it to the borough. The borough sent it to the chief of department. And guess what? The chief of department's friendly with this guy who was in this bar the other day, right? So that's where the influence peddling can come into play. Could it be a tip-off? Maybe. Could somebody be on the payroll? Maybe. Could there be a third party that's the bar's paying, that's influence peddling with the police department? Possibly. So if we could just play this is a pretty long video, so we'll stop it at some point. But this is Eric Adams. This is one of his first acts as mayor. It's about a year in to his mayorship. He's dogging the March program. Business leaders have long dogged the March program. Here's Eric Adams on why he's pulling down the March program.
A great leader to be in place and just really change the dialogue and conversation of how we treat the nightlife industry. These are businesses. These are businesses. They generate billions of dollars in revenue. They attract people to the city. This city does not stop at 5 p.m. There's an entire new level of economic development that happens in the late evening hours. And that's what I knew I had to do when I became mayor. I wanted to show the nightlife establishment, the people, the DJs, to the DJ up in the DJ booth, you know, the DJs, the waiters, the waitresses, those who were the cooks, the chefs, this entire ecosystem that I knew oh so well. And they really respected the fact that they had a mayor that did not want to demonize their industry, but wanted to lift up that industry. All of us know after a hard day, there's nothing place better than going to your favorite watering hole and sit down talking to someone that won't identify you because you dropped that business sale, but will lift you up because you're there to bring your business to their establishment. And that's what this is all about. And March was the wrong way of doing this. This is something that was put in place in the 90s. It was extremely abusive and intrusive in a real way. Many of us can talk about sitting in a restaurant, a club somewhere, and all of a sudden the lights come on. You have this large number of people that come in and just treat our businesses in an unprofessional way. That is not how you treat a business, and that is what this momentum is all about. And look at the city. The city is the place of Studio 54, Paradise Garage, Max Fitz, CBGB's, Loft, and so many others. We're the king and queen of nightlife industry globally. People come to New York because of our exciting nightlife. Only city on the globe where you got the theme, the city that never sleeps. And in fact, we don't even take a nap. Something is always happening in New York all the times of the day. So today's like here at Paragon, nowadays made in Mexico, and Mama Juana, Cafe Bronx are providing space for people to go out, listen to music, dance, something that you were able to get done. You know, it used to be illegal to dance in a cafe in the city. To come out and dance and just really enjoy what it's like in this city. But listen, let's be clear. If it's not done correctly, it could impact the quality of life of those New Yorkers who live in the area. And so noise, trash, crime can disrupt local residents, and complaints can lead to unannounced inspections. And so we want to get it right. And that's what Jeff is doing as the new head of the nightlife, the mayor of the nightlife industry in our city. We must provide public safety while ensuring businesses can remain open and New Yorkers can still dance in the dark. So today, we are changing the way we engage with nightlife businesses throughout the city by launching CURE, the acronym CURE. We're bringing together NYPD, SBS, Commissioner Kim and his entire team in the Office of Nightlife to improve public safety responses to nightlife establishment. Now, it's not lost on me that, Chief, you're a DJ. So we have the right people in the right mix. And so we want to better engage business owners to focus on compliance and education, not over enforcement. Previously, nightlife establishments have faced unannounced late night and multi-agencies inspections.
All right, there you go, baby. So what do you think about with the illustrious Eric Adams, his take on March and what he was saying about the businesses and this new program CURE and this new office that he created, the Office of the Nightlife?
Ron Laser makes a great comment, by the way, because he's a complete moron, Eric Adams. Ron Laser says it wasn't illegal to dance in a club. You just need a cabaret license. That's absolutely true. It was a license for people to dance in a club based on the occupied allowance because of the fire code. It was actually to protect people because it goes back to the history of Happy Land because of fires. It has nothing to do with dancing illegal. I mean, was this the movie Footloose? This is absolutely, he's a complete moron. So Ron Lace, and I appreciate that. Good morning, by the way. But of course, Eric Adams wants to take credit for that. So CURE, I remember before these allegations had really stemmed and come out in the public, John, both yourself and myself have reported numerous times on this podcast that it's pretty odd what's going on with the March program. I remember saying, what's going on with the March program? You know, at the time, I didn't look into it. I didn't even know what the CURE program was. I said, what's going on with the March program? Because we hear all these complaints. Sal Greco was really diving into what's going on with Casa Fritos. And we said, wow, it's interesting. We never heard anything about any March operations there. And that was because once we started to dive in, we found out that they transitioned to this CURE program, which is coordinated united resolution of establishments. And the ideology behind CURE is that there's not supposed to be enforcement-led action at these locations, that it would be community-based, and the commanding officers would be involved to have interactions with these restaurants and to try to work together. But to my knowledge, we already had that in place. The community affairs officers in every precinct, part of their responsibility, especially, I'm sure Rob Nappy could probably speak to this, because the 6-8 is probably one of the most dense precincts in the city with nightlife. So the community affairs officers in the precincts were supposed to have an established relationship with restaurants and especially bars and things like that, to have that relationship when he talks about cure. And that's supplemental to the march operations if needed. And just as Rob Mappy said, 97% in a precinct of 6-8, he says there's 125 bars and nightlife locations. 97% didn't have an issue. So it was a small percentage. So if those march operations are necessary to stop a potential shooting or violence at a particular location, well, you know what? Then I think it's necessary, because sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes you have absentee landlords. And what I say by that is you have people that own bars and restaurants, but they're kind of like a silent owner. So the people that are actually running it might not be as delved or dived in as the owner. Maybe they're not taking care of it. And unfortunately, that silent owner may only be on the receiving end of the funds and might not actually know what's going on. So the police, along with these other agencies, may need to step in. And it's not just violence. It's all, sometimes we get complaints that a place is dirty. People getting sick. Maybe there's flies inside the drinks, or there's other issues, fire issues. But there's a coordinated response with the police department. But once we found out that the march operation was removed and transitioned to this cure program, I remember the light bulb going off, like, okay, something's wrong here. And then once all this stuff started to ferment, like, wow, you know what? The appearance of it didn't look right, and it started to add up. So what are your thoughts, Sean?
Yeah, so Ron Layson weighs in. He says, when I was the commanding officer of the 110 precinct, we did a monthly march operation up and down Roosevelt Avenue. I got calls all the time from local politicians and other people to try to go easy on certain spots. And by other people, I don't mean to make an ass out of me and you, but I'm going to assume those other people are members of the NYPD, particularly high-ranking members of the NYPD, right? And so it's funny when you listen to Eric Adams speak, because it sounds good. It sounds very good. It sounds like something that makes sense. Okay, we don't want to harm businesses. We want to help them. We want to cure them. It sounds good. But the businesses in particular that he names, when you think of all the allegations and all of the stuff we heard over the last 2 years about the corruption, about this influence peddling scheme, I think it's highly important that people go back to that interview. They look at the names of the businesses that he mentions, and you look at who's the owner, who's the part owner, who are the people who have been involved, who are the people that have been going to those places and going to those commands that oversee those places, and how have they been portrayed throughout history? Like, where are those people? Where are they now? What were they doing? Why were people who were influence peddling then now running agencies, right? So Eric Adams creates the Office of the Nightlife, right? He brings this Office of the Nightlife. Jack, could you pull up the Twitter handle for the Office of the Nightlife for me? So the Office of the Nightlife. Now, this is a government tax-funded agency. This is like he created a city department. This is something that's not done very often, right? He stops this multi-agency response. So it basically takes the state liquor authority out of it, right? Because now those state agencies are gone. The only enforcement that we're going to have that's going to stem from the city, like that's going to be proactive, is going to come from this Office of the Nightlife. So you hear here, official City of New York account supporting New York City nightlife businesses with promoting safety, harm reduction culture, and community relations. So this is the Office of the Nightlife Disco Ball. And he appoints Jeffrey Garcia as the head of this agency. Now, Jeffrey Garcia, I believe, is a retired NYPD detective. I've heard from numerous people that Jeffrey Garcia has been involved in a lot of these calls, like, hey, could we lay off of these businesses? Could we not? So who is Jeff Garcia? Jeff Garcia was at one time the president and co-founder of the Latino Marijuana Association, right? And what they're doing is trying to get Latino ownership into it's LCA, I believe. Do you have that? Yeah, could you pull that up? Yeah, LCA, Latino Cannabis Association, excuse me. So co-founder is Jeffrey Garcia. He was actually the one-time president. We have a video of that. We're not going to play that. But it's been long spoke about. Jeffrey Garcia, when he retired, he has been helping these businesses, what we call it, consulting businesses, and sometimes has appeared at meetings with NYPD, with high-ranking NYPD officials, when some people were making calls, right? Other people were making calls. So this is Jeff Garcia. He's working for he's the president of that. He's the co-founder of that association. And what's weird about that is the way that the NYPD in New York City Sheriff's Office is responding to smoke shops and responding to this marijuana, like these marijuana shops or these illegal marijuana shops that the way they're responding is actually way worse than the March operation. They're walking in, warrantless searches. They're throwing people in handcuffs. There's a photo of Sheriff Miranda. Could you pull that up? And he's actually with the Latino Hispanic Association at that time. So if you could pull that photo up. So here's Sheriff Miranda. Great time with Latino cannabis on our first event. Sheriff Miranda, he approves. So now he's involved in this, and you're saying, wait a minute, you're going to businesses and doing warrantless searches. Some of the stuff people are saying, there's allegations that there's money missing. There's allegations that there's product missing. There's allegations that they're not getting vouchers for the stuff that was taken. Numerous allegations around when we look at that other program. But Jeffrey Garcia, who's heading up this cure program, who's heading up the Office of the Nightlife, it appears is also consulting on how the city and the sheriff are responding to this. Obviously, this is all one big circle of everybody's together. All of this influence peddling is right out there. And I'm not even saying that they're doing anything illegal. I'm just saying when I look at this is a huge conflict of interest. This is something. Oh, and thank you, Nighthawk. You took the words out of my mouth. Huge conflict of interest. There is the appearance of this is horrendous. So we're not going after bars and restaurants. The guy that traditionally advocates for bars and restaurants is now in charge of the Office of the Nightlife. He was running an organization to promote Latinos in this cannabis industry. At the same time, he's hanging out with the sheriff of New York City, who's implicated, and all of these other businesses are saying, wait, I've been getting slammed with these warrantless searches that are much worse than what the March program ever did. But the guy across the street never gets touched. And you're sitting there and you're saying, what is going on? What is happening here? What do you think about the appearance of all this?
I said it for a long time. I said the appearance of impropriety when it comes to Jeffrey Garcia and his relationship to the NYPD and his ties to the cure program, it doesn't look good. And this is way before it was actually reported. When you and I started to learn about the March program being removed in transition, here's Jeffrey Garcia. And yes, he was a first-grade detective in narcotics with the NYPD. To my understanding, he actually conducted the interviews for undercovers, if I'm right. If anybody can actually speak to that, I appreciate it. But from what I heard, he did conduct, and he was a major player as far as interviewing potential undercovers for the narcotics program. So he has a lot of intricate information of what goes on in these streets. He's also working hand-in-hand, to my knowledge. He also had a major part in the Hispanic Society fraternal organization. So here's Jeffrey Garcia, Nightlife here. Drone Ranger makes a great comment also. So I don't know, if this was something at Comstat. Let me find that comment here by Drone Ranger. Here we go. These comments are flying off the board here. You guys are doing great. Appreciate it. Where is it? There we go.
It's on the screen, bro.
Okay. Jeffrey Garcia. Thank you. Thanks, Jack. Jeffrey Garcia gave presentations at every Comstat until he hit every borough. He gave his personal number and pretty much said, don't take enforcement action at licensed premises without calling me first. I mean, that should be an indication. Obviously, no one's going to report corruption based on that alone, but we have all this appearance of impropriety, his nexus to Sheriff Miranda, his nexus to this this weed operation here, his knowledge of narcotics, him saying don't take any enforcement action, and him being off the job, being part of the nightlife. These should have been red flags. Say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Again, I'm not saying you have to report corruption at this point, but say, hey, the red flags are there. We're all cops. Something doesn't look right. And John, you asked about the appearance. That this has an appearance of impropriety all over it. By the way, thank you so much to the chat, our friends and listeners. You guys make awesome comments, really diving in and keeping us engaged together. We appreciate it. So at this time, like, share, and subscribe. About 35 minutes into it, building a timeline of what led up to the potential allegations, the appearance of impropriety in regards to 301 complaints, how it ties into James Caban, the twin brother to the former police commissioner, Ed Caban, the nexus with the Hispanic Society, the nexus to Sheriff Miranda. We're giving you a lot of evidence. The preponderance of evidence, to me, is pretty clear. And what is also, before you weigh in on this, John, I think it's peculiar and quite interesting to me that the NYPD upper echelon, including Jessica Tisch, has shied away from having any conversations about this, because I speak to cops on a daily basis, and of course I keep them anonymous. And they tell me the immense pressure they're getting right now about overtime and other issues being pressed on them in the precincts. But yet, nothing about 301s and nothing about what was going on in the nightlife to prevent anything further if there is teeth to these allegations. I haven't heard anything about these 301s.
So Jeff Garcia gets appointed, right? He gets appointed to this. He was also the Latino Bar Association president as well prior to that. So he was a Latino marijuana, Latino cannabis, Latino Bar Association. So that's where I'm saying he's been using his influence. So Eric Adams comes along. He names bars that traditionally have had problems, right? And I'm like, oh, who owns that? Oh, who's part owner of that? Is there a certain form of a police commissioner's brother who's part owner of one of those bars? I think so. I don't know, but I would look at that. I would look into that. I'm not 100%, but I think so. So we get there, right? Then you look at, all right, well, how have these people been associated with these bars in the NYPD? Obviously, we just said it, right? Part owners, silent owners. Phil Banks, as Pat Donahue points out, Phil Banks when he leaves the department in Scandal, he's working for that pot distribution firm, right? This is prior to that law coming into place. Looks like influence peddling to me at City Hall. Then who does Phil Banks become after this? He becomes the deputy mayor of public safety, right? And guess who he's associated with? All of these same people. Everybody's related. Everybody knows each other. So we have a clip of Jeffrey Garcia, and he's talking about Cure, and he's talking about the nightlife. Let's see what Jeff has to say about
it. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jeffrey Garcia, and I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Nightlife at the Department of Small Business Services, SBS. I'm thrilled to be at Paragon today with Mayor Adams and nightlife lovers and advocates to unveil a new transformative citywide policy that has been years in the making. For those who don't know, the Office of Nightlife at SBS serves as a central point of contact among the nightlife industry, community, and city agencies. We help nightlife business start and grow New York City and work with countless agency partners to help New Yorkers party safely. Our goal is to help build a more vibrant nightlife industry that creates good jobs and contributes to our community. With just a few nights until New Year's Eve, one of the biggest party weekends of the year, we want to embrace the theme of leaving behind the old and ushering in the new. The bold new policy formed together between O&L and the NYPD to engage nightlife businesses in making our city more safe and end outdated enforcement practices that have unduly shut down dozens of nightlife businesses. With this plan, we will keep the heartbeat of New York City, our nightlife venues, vibrant throughout the 5 boroughs. Before we hear from Mayor Adams, and other speakers, I would like to acknowledge that the
I gotta laugh. Yeah, I gotta laugh. VSS Ventoria's got me laughing all day. It says, "I'll take things, I'll take things that are fraudulent for 1,000." I mean, listen, that's what I'm trying to say. We have, if you look at the timeline, right? So we decided that we're doing this timeline here in reverse, right? Showing you that we have 301 complaints ignored, and going back to all the different things that the different signs and red flags that were there that must be part of this investigation right now, and this potential corruption probe, this potential racketeering operation going along in the NYPD, headed by James Caban, the evil twin to the former brother of Ed Caban. But you look at if you look back at this, and as we go back, it's one of those moments where you're like, oh, okay, it doesn't look right. You have Jeffrey Garcia. I mean, he has ties to Hispanic society. All these ties to Eric Adams about nepotism, cronyism, all these connections that they have, the appearance of impropriety, level after layer, layer after layer. You can peel this back and you're like, okay, this just doesn't look right. But why weren't these red flags addressed, and why are these red flags not being addressed now? We're very silent about it. And I think at no point have I heard Jessica Tisch speak about this in public. This should be something that is constantly spoken about, because the 301 complaints are an integral part to the violence reduction operation in the city. There's no doubt about it. These are brought up at CompStat. Every commander is responsible and has to audit their 301 complaints. It's an integral part to the overall public safety in every command, especially, as Rob Nappy mentioned, in the 6-8 precinct, where they have a large nightlife. And yet we don't hear anything about it. And why they're being quiet about it is very peculiar, and it's odd, and it should raise a lot of questions.
So now we're in the Eric Adams administration, right? And Eric Adams creates this task force. He creates this cure program. He makes the Office of the Nightlife. He dismantles the multi-agency response. He does that. He appoints Jeff Garcia as the head of this nightlife agency, who was long been advocating on behalf of restaurants and bars. So is that a bad thing? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, depending on how he's been advocating, because obviously, like I said, a lot of these bars and restaurants have had problems. So if you're the commanding officer, if you're the field intelligence officer, if you're an anti-crime, if you're in special operations, you're a special operations lieutenant, you're going to be dealing directly with these establishments. Get your stuff up to speed. Stop letting underage people in. Make sure you're checking people for weapons. Don't violate the fire code, right? You're going to be working with them, but when they're not happening, you're going to run march programs on them, right? And you're going to run checks. Again, you're not getting summons for things that you didn't do, right? Like, you're getting summons for violations that happen. Your bar's getting shut down for things that happen. You're getting notifications to the state liquor authority for things that happen. Is New York a little anti-business? I'll be the first to say it. Absolutely. But a lot of stuff is legitimate. Like, they're legitimate problems. They're legitimate public safety threats. So we're here. Keechant Sewell steps down. He appoints Ed Caban to police commissioner. Ed Caban was already serving as the first deputy commissioner under Keechant Sewell. So obviously all of this has empowered the same people that have been around all of these businesses for years. So they have empowered all of this. So now, while Ed Caban's the police commissioner, his brother, twin brother, James Caban, is given an NYPD security detail and is getting chauffeured around by NYPD cops. Nobody saw a problem with that. I saw a huge problem with it, right? So what happens? There's a bar owner in Coney Island, and we played this video a few weeks ago, but I'd like to bring that back up. There's a video, I believe it's from News 4, New York City, of a bar owner. And the bar owner alleges that he's had a problem. He's had a problem with this Office of the Nightlife. Because what was happening is the police department was showing up at his bar and summonsing him. And he's like, I'm not going to be able to last. I'm going to get shut down. I'm not going to be able to maintain this business. So he hears about this great program that wants to help businesses. They're not going to help shut down businesses. They're going to help cure businesses, right? So he reaches out to the Office of the Nightlife. And if you could bring up that video and let's see what happens when he reaches out to the Office of the Nightlife. Play the video.
Federal corruption investigation into City Hall and the NYPD now includes allegations of a shakedown. A Brooklyn bar owner says he was told that his problems with the NYPD would go away if he paid the police commissioner's brother. And he says it was a worker in the mayor's office who tried to help arrange that deal. Chief investigative reporter Jonathan Dientz joins us now with details.
Chuck, the bar owner had his permits, his liquor license, and his share of noise complaints. But what he says he needed, a break from tough NYPD enforcement. Seeking help, he says he was introduced to a mayoral staffer and then to the twin brother of the NYPD's top cop. And then he says he was asked for thousands in payments.
I felt like it was like I got an ultimatum. Like, it's either you get with this or you're going to get shut down. We're going to make sure you get shut down.
Shamel Kelly says it was this man, mayoral staffer Ray Martin, who first told him he could pay the police commissioner's brother to help get better treatment from the NYPD.
He just said that he was assistant of Eric Adams and he know people. And he dropped the Mr. Eddie Caban name because he's, I guess, the NYPD commissioner. And I was having problems with the NYPD.
Later, Kelly says the police commissioner's brother, James Caban, told him he could help with his NYPD problems if he paid him $2,500 up front. The state liquor authority says Kelly's bar was not facing any charges of wrongdoing, but there were dozens of noise complaints to 311 about loud music. Kelly says he felt too many cops from the 6-0 precinct kept showing up, hurting his relatively new business, the Juice and More Bar, along Mermaid Avenue. And he says his pleas for help from the NYPD and local community board were unsuccessful. Kelly said he never expected that Ray Martin from the mayor's office would give him this advice.
He went on about how he thinks that I should just close the bar. And if I don't close the bar, there's only one way to get the police to stop doing what they're doing, and that's to speak to one of his friends, which was the James Caban guy.
James Caban, an ex-cop, is the twin brother of NYPD Commissioner Eddie Caban. Kelly showed us phone records and text messages from August 2023, where Martin from the mayor's office allegedly encouraged Kelly to contact James Caban. Hey, Shamel, reminder to call James. Kelly says these phone records and texts show he and the commissioner's brother discussed the issues surrounding his business, a business which was a juice bar by day and licensed to serve alcohol on weekend nights. James Caban allegedly wrote, spoke to the commanding officer, and the biggest complaint from the community board is that you're registered as a juice bar, and now you're doing parties there. Lots of noise complaints.
If you have a license to serve alcohol, it shouldn't matter. And I also explained to him that the community board knew that it was the summertime, so they knew we were going to do Thursday, Friday, Saturday night events.
Records suggest Kelly and Caban also spoke by phone. And that's when Kelly says James Caban asked him for the initial $2,500.
He said that he will mediate my issues with NYPD. He could bring them to me, have a meeting, resolve our issues, is what he specifically said he could do. After he said I had to pay him for it, I felt like it was him trying to extort me. So I just was like, you know what? No, I'm good. I'll just deal with it how I deal with it. And it got worse.
So there you go. That happens. Now this allegation comes out. What were your thoughts around when this allegation dropped, Eric?
So immediately when this allegation was brought out, I said there should be a large probe by DOI. Internal Affairs should be diving into it. And of course they didn't. There's no doubt about it. Listen, could this actual bar owner, we don't know him personally, could he have, I don't know. He claims he has a state liquor authority license. Does he? Does he have a license for a liquor? Is it just beer and wine? I don't know what he has. I don't know exactly. Is it a juice bar? Is it a bar? But it doesn't matter. The bottom line is his allegation is pretty substantial. He has some damning evidence with these text messages. He's saying that he does have interaction by the police department. The only interaction he should have had is by community affairs. Should have been a March operation. If the March operation was still in place, there should have been all these things in place because of complaints that were emanating from this place. So he gets for $2,500 if he doesn't have his permits up to snuff. If there's actually complaints, this goes completely ignored. So that's a huge operation. How does this help public safety at all? But this is a major allegation, and that's what I said, they're very quiet about it. Patrick Donahue made a great comment here before, saying that that nothing's going to happen. That they don't want to uncover this corruption, and that's what it appears to me, that they really don't want to uncover corruption. It's a lot of damning evidence. Let's even go back further. We have complete hypocrisy here. Sal Greco was wrongfully terminated for a criminal association, which you and I both say shouldn't even be charged by the NYPD because of the amount of hypocrisy that goes on in the upper echelon. But James Caban was actually terminated from the police department for an incident that he had. I don't know all the particulars, but the bottom line is he was terminated, and he had a case going on with that also. So, and for criminal association, all you need is reason to believe someone could be engaged in a crime. And so the background that James Caban has, he should never had a security detail. He should never have this much intricate information to the police department. He should never have this much access. And arguably, being the twin brother with a security detail, it's my opinion, and I'm sure, John, you and I spoke about this, you agree, that James Caban has or had more access than chiefs at one police plaza because of the appearance, because he has security detail, because he can pass as the brother. He has more access anywhere in one police plaza than most people have in the police department.
Nighthawk says, I'm surprised no one else told on James about his BS. They all just went along with the extortion. I don't get it. I do. It's called cowardice. It's called staying in line. There's a lot of people who were making grumblings from below, but it wasn't penetrating the top because the top was completely taken over. It was a complete hostile takeover of the NYPD in New York City by what appears to be a criminal organization. I mean, like, again, I keep saying it. Imagine taking the guys from Goodfellas. You take Paulie, you take Henry, you take whatever Joe Pesci's name was, Tommy, take all those guys, and you make one of them the mayor, and he makes all of them commissioners in charge of all the agencies. What would happen? This is what would happen. This is exactly what would happen. It wouldn't matter. So as soon as that allegation drops, I put out a tweet about it. I said my preliminary analysis of what appears to be a corruption scandal involving top NYPD officials. New York City Mayor Eric Adams dismantled the multi-agency enforcement task force in December of 23, a move that many of us raised questions about that were never answered. To my knowledge, he never installed anything to fill the public safety void dismantling this task force left. Now it is being alleged by many news outlets that NYPD PC Ed Caban's brother was running a nightclub protection racket where if you utilized his services, your establishment would be protected from NYPD enforcement. What does that mean? Let's say an incident or crime takes place at your establishment, which would elicit a response from the NYPD, which may lead to a possible shutdown, summons, and or state liquor authority notification. You just call the consulting firm. Your consultant then uses his influence to reach out to the NYPD's top cop, who may reach out to a bureau chief, commissioner, borough commander, and or precinct commander to ensure that a shutdown, summons, and or SLA notification never happens. That consultant may even have direct access to these top-ranking officials also. Of course, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and these are all unproven allegations. However, Eric Adams dismantling the multi-agency nightlife task force created a void that would allow for such corruption to go unpunished and unnoticed. If what is being alleged is true, then it's just the tip of the iceberg, and it will mean that the integrity of the entire upper echelon of the NYPD is compromised and can no longer be trusted to run the largest department in the world and must immediately be removed. And upon tweeting that, and that thing went out viral, it went everywhere, there was a propagandist who responded. His name's Viral News New York City. He said, fact checked. Here's the truth. The mayor hired Jeff Garcia as the executive director to lead club enforcement in the city under an initiative called CURE, which started in January of 24. They work closely with the police and other agencies to hold clubs accountable. Nice try with your conspiracy theory, John. Do your homework and look it up. So also in 24, Jeffrey Garcia, who we had just showed you, and who's running the Office of the Nightlife, Jeffrey Garcia spoke at a ComStat. So you're wondering why no one spoke up? These are the people that are in charge of the entire city. Who are you complaining to? Who are you going to? Oh, you're going to go to Internal Affairs? Oh, guess who's in charge of Internal Affairs? Oh, Caban appointed him. Oh, guess what's happening? Nothing. They're basically getting rid of this entire thing. They're getting rid of everything. So this bar owner says that he reaches out to CURE. He reaches out to CURE. He speaks to a man by the name of Ray Martin. Who's Ray Martin? Oh, we don't know. The mayor didn't know anything about this. The mayor doesn't know Ray Martin. The mayor doesn't know James Caban. The mayor doesn't know Jeffrey Garcia. He has no idea what's going on. Who's Ray Martin? How close is Ray Martin to Eric Adams? This bar owner, could you pull up the Ray Martin audio, please? So Ray Martin, now this bar owner says, I reached out to Ray Martin. They showed the text message of Ray Martin telling, hey, make sure you reach out to James. Upon this allegation coming out, Ray Martin's immediately fired, and within weeks, Ed Caban steps down. I don't even think it was weeks. I think it was days, but whatever. Few days, maybe a week or two, Ed Caban steps down. Ray Martin's immediately fired. Who's Ray Martin? Could you play the audio?
You know, this is not the 1800s. So we had to take ownership that for whatever reason, there is violence that is associated and give this perception associated with Juve. So that killing ignited a group of us. I was always working very closely with the borough president, Eric Adams. Again, I was his kind of liaison to the community in terms of hospitality and nightlife. I should say, Eric, borough president Adams, has been really a true ambassador. One of the things that people don't realize that where I am now in the mayor's office, this was triggered by him. Yes, and when he was a senator, I was relentlessly, any black elected officials can tell you, they know who Ray Martin is. And he's a pest.
I believe that.
He's a damn pest.
Yo, shout out to Borough President Eric Adams. I had the honor of being one of the youngest people on his committee, on his Caribbean Heritage Committee back in 2014. I know that he's a staunch promoter of culture and our people of color. He's also very much into health. So I know that we're going to make sure he hears this episode to hear him.
I'll help you to get him on the show.
I would absolutely love that.
All right.
I would absolutely love that.
We'll work on that.
So that's Ray Martin, a very good friend of Eric Adams.
So what do we know? Eric Adams only appoints friends, circle of nepotism, and cronies into his circle and his administration. There's no doubt about it. Ray Martin was working in City Hall as the operations manager to community relations. So there's no doubt about it. He wouldn't get that position just off an interview. In order to be in Eric Adams' circle, to be part of that administration, you have to be a friend. So there's no doubt about it. I mean, immediately he was terminated. They said he was terminated with cause after this had come out, this allegation. So how could Ray Martin be terminated immediately? And we don't hear more of a probe going on to the police department. And you're right, John. When we go back to that tweet, by the way, it was a great job. I thought your tweet was very distinctive. I thought it was a great job. But what did you put in there that I thought was so important? Is you said they created the pathway. So if Eric Adams actually dived into this personally or not, he created the pathway to allow this to actually ferment into what it's become. By removing March, removing all these agencies that have oversight and are interconnected on the overall workings of the nightlife in New York City, bringing it into this QR program leaves room and flexibility to have corruption tied to nightlife is what we see. So again, us building this timeline for you, going back, you see, now you can see, wow, look at all these signs, look at all the red flags that you had. You had the March operation removed, which was working for years. It was very effective, especially in the Juliana area, along with Bloomberg. And the nightlife apparatus that we've gotten to was a major part on that. We removed that. We moved to this cure program. And to my knowledge, community affairs in each precinct is already delved into working with these bars and having communication, having a relationship. That is part of community relations. You're absolutely right, John. But this created the pathway. There's numerous signs. What happened with Ray Martin, the allegations by this bar, a security detail for James Caban, the twin brother of Ed Caban. So we have all this appearance of impropriety. To me, the preponderance of evidence has been met. And the fact that it's been so quiet at the upper echelon, especially with Jessica Tisch, who wants to clean out corruption, because this probe is not ended. We have not gotten any closure on it, speaks to a lot of questions. And you're absolutely right, John. The grumblings come from the rank and file, but not the upper echelon. The appointment of former chief, Iglesias, whatever it is, Miguel Iglesias to NYPD Internal Affairs. That's a major red flag also. His ties, his nepotism, his connection to Eric Adams, Jeffrey Mandry, and also Ed Caban. That's another red flag. All the red flags have been there. All the signs have been there. All the indications of corruption that was allotted, and especially the fact with these 301s being ignored, when we go back to the end of this right now, that's a huge red flag, as it's an integral part, always discussed at ComSat. Ron Layson, a former CO, Rob Lukash, Rob Nappy, these gentlemen can tell you how important and 301s are vital to their audit system when it comes to ComStat. These COs are dived into 301s. It's a very important part. So for them to go ignored, or the allegation for it to get ignored, that's a huge problem. And the fact that we don't hear more public press about this is a major problem. So think about it. If you're making a complaint right now, a 301 complaint, do you, if you're a citizen of New York City, do you trust that that complaint is going to be answered? Absolutely not.
So Jerry McCoy, shout out to Jerry McCoy. He says, y'all are just racists, targeting a black mayor, talking about everything except Anthony Weiner's laptop and the suicides of your blue brothers who investigated. Shame on y'all. So Jerry, if anything we said here is inaccurate, please let us know. Targeting us isn't really going to help. So what we're doing here is we're just establishing a timeline of what the media has reported in bits and pieces. And the problem why you don't hear media in New York and in New York City is because there's a guy who runs a radio station and runs the Republican elections in New York City. His name's John Katzimatidis, and he employs a guy by the name of Anthony Weiner. And all the conservatives say that this is a conservative radio station. So we're not talking about Anthony Weiner right now, but maybe we will one day. What we're talking about is a possible NYPD extortion racket, and honestly, a possible New York City Hall extortion influence peddling racket that has taken over all of New York City. And in my opinion, New York City, I don't care what color their skin is. I don't care that they're black. I don't care if they're Italian. I don't care if they're Hispanic. I don't care if they're Chinese. This appears to be a criminal enterprise. And that's what we're labeling out. So now let's fast forward. So now, me and Eric are taking a lot of heat. I speak to pretty prominent person in law enforcement, in the law enforcement community. This is about a year or two ago. And I'm speaking to him. We have an intimate conversation. And he says to me, I went to a dinner in New York City and I went up to who I thought was the police commissioner. And I shook his hand and I said, how you doing, Commissioner? And I spoke to him. And then I went and sat back down at my table. And I said, I just spoke to Caban. They were like, that's not the commissioner. He's like, what are you talking about? They're like, that's his twin brother. That's not him. And he goes, are you kidding me? He just played. He didn't even correct me. I was calling him commissioner. I was saying this. I was saying that. And they all just shook their head at the table. And the guy, because he's a gentleman, he's like, you know what? I'm not even going to make an issue of it, but he's like, dirtbag. That's all he said, dirtbag. You know, he's like, I was so annoyed. I was so mad. I had a conversation with the guy, and he pawned himself off as the commissioner. And then now fast forward to last week. Last week, an article comes out by Tina Moore in the New York Post where a lieutenant in the NYPD, an integrity control officer in the NYPD, is saying that Caban, James Caban, would show up. And obviously he's showing up with an NYPD security detail. So if you're not too familiar with how these people look, or you're not, because you don't see the commissioner every day as a cop, unless you work. And even if you work in one police plaza, you might not ever see the commissioner. So it's possible you never really get a good look at these people. And when you're in the police department, you work all the time. So you don't really watch the news or read the news. You are the news. You make the news, right? You're responding to what's in the news. When you go home, you kind of want to detach from all this stuff. So a guy comes up. He looks like the commissioner. Everybody's saluting him. And he's instructing roll call. The same way the head of the nightlife is instructing all the upper echelon of the NYPD chiefs. The same way that the chiefs are hanging out with all of the people who own these businesses and these restaurants, right? And the same way the mayor's with all of them. So article comes out by Tina Moore, and this lieutenant is now alleging that in these precincts, James Caban would show up and speak to people as if he was the police commissioner and give instruction. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, well, I'm not shocked, because I had that conversation with that guy about a year ago who said that he peddled himself off as the police commissioner when in fact he wasn't.
Well, that's why I say it goes back to what I was saying earlier. There's no doubt about it that being the twin brother and the access that he had to the police department, along with the removal of March and into this cure program, gave him even more access. And I would say arguably that James Caban had more access than chiefs at one police plaza. Even at this time, with this corruption probe that's going on, who actually has security clearance at one police plaza? But I can tell you, James Caban definitely had more access than a lot of these chiefs, because even Eric Adams doesn't have security clearance himself. So the fact that he's the twin brother with the security detail, that this information was not public, and that no one ever spoke up about it, that's why I said that everyone is compromised at the upper echelon. Everyone's compromised, especially chiefs, because they're all aware that his twin brother has security detail. That is completely unnecessary. Why is the taxpayers paying that? Why are we being completely bamboozled? Why is the twin brother having his own security detail? This is crazy. This is great right here. This great excerpt from the last article that just surfaced. Precinct Commander Anuti Castillo and his subordinates facilitated deception, allowing officers to believe that orders were coming from the police commissioner himself, according to the complaint. Exactly that, because he's the twin brother. And he may have, and I'm sure, more access than chiefs at the upper echelon of the police department. And also have a security detail. If you're a brand new rookie on the job and he looks the way he looks and you have the pictures on your wall, are you really going to question who is that? Especially as the twin brother. If you're a rookie on the job, are you really going to look him in the eye and right in the face and try to make a determination on who that is? Listen, of course, these are allegations, but these allegations hold a lot of teeth to it. There's a lot of red flags and signs, and there's so much compounded information. We can peel back the layers of what's going on here. It has the appearance of impropriety. This is a major problem. Again, Jessica Tisch, where are you on this? We hear you talking about eradicating corruption from the NYPD. Why have you not put your footprint on this 301 system? Why have you not put your footprint on this potential racketeering problem? We don't have closure yet, and neither do you.
And shout out to former NYPD Sergeant Stephen Lee. He's on there, The System Unfiltered. Check his YouTube channel out at The System Unfiltered. He says, I want to know, am I going to get restored? Because I was targeted for exposing all of this since 2016. Those of you should go back, watch the interview with Stephen Lee. And in 2016, he was involved in exposing a racketeering and influence peddling scheme involving basically all of the same players in the Asian community. It wasn't in the Uptown community in the 3-4 precinct where all of this is now stemming from, and Brooklyn, where we're getting these allegations from. So fast forward after that comes out this Sunday, an article comes out from Tina Moore, right? And Tina Moore, now she writes an article. Now we know why 311 complaints were ignored. New Yorkers put pieces together after Post revealed a scandal. So, and now it really just drives everything home without doing an in-depth proper investigation. The only thing that we could really do is, without interviewing people, without having arrest authority, is put together a timeline. And that's exactly what we're doing. And if anyone's upset that we're doing a timeline, I just have one thing for you: too fucking bad. So anyway, Inwood residents who say their quality of life about a rowdy bar and restaurants have been ignored think they finally have a smoking gun evidence to crack the case. The Post exclusively reported last week that NYPD Commissioner Ed Caban's twin brother James allegedly used his relationship with 34th Precinct Commanding Officer Anuti Castillo to stop 311 enforcement at businesses he represented, many of which are in Inwood. Maria Quinones is among the locals who believe those meetings led to the lack of enforcement last summer on noise, double parking, trash, and other issues around restaurants and bars. Some transforms into raucous clubs at night around Dyckman Street and Broadway. We wondered who is letting all this happen and why isn't anyone doing anything about it, Quinones 62 said, and now we know why. Residents have been complaining about the string of bars for years, but the situation was unbearable last summer. It's definitely gotten worse, said longtime resident Inwood Maggie Clark. More recently, you use your 311 app, so everything is all written down, and you see the time you registered your complaint, and then within minutes, you see it's closed. There are about 8,500 service requests made to 311 Manhattan Community District 12, which covers Inwood, between last August and September alone. City data shows about 375 for noise complaints and 900 for parking issues. I've never felt so vindicated when I read that article, said resident Liz DeMayo, 68, who griped about how police began allowing valet parking at bars recently to prevent thieves from preying on customers. But the vehicles were double and triple parked on sidewalks and streets, creating havoc, but her complaints were futile. Resident Tanya Bonner, 55, said the businesses became unbearably loud during the summer. We asked for audits of 311, said Bonner, co-founder of Wahi Inwood Task Force on Noise. We've asked for updated noise codes. We've asked for many things. We've been going in circles. Added Quinones, it's terrible that the community of working people really got shit on. James Caban, a former NYPD officer who was fired after a fight with a cabbie 2 decades ago, allegedly met with Castillo in Washington Heights Station House about 5 times in January 23 and September, according to a federal whistleblower complaint, which he claimed he impersonated a top cop. A police source said there were 2 meetings. James Caban did not respond for comment. Mayor Eric Adams appointed Ed Caban as commissioner in July of 23, but he resigned just 14 months later in September of 24 after his phone was confiscated amid a federal probe involving club enforcement. And there you go. You bring it all home.
Another red flag, which should be in this case right here, is by the accounts of these witnesses, right? The accounts of the people making the complaint based on this app. Because 311 complaints typically get the least amount of response. And what I say is they're low-level priority. Their priority, of course, is important to the police department. I talked about how it's an integral part to preventing violence. But actual response time, it's not considered high priority. A high priority would be a 911 call. The 911 calls obviously get first response by the police department. So the 301 calls, the fact that these complaints and these complaints in the 301 system are being closed out within minutes, that's a major red flag, because 301 complaints typically are lower level priority and the 911 calls get answered first. You know, sometimes if you have a parking condition, a noise complaint, depending on what precinct you're working or how busy it is, what your manpower is, the response time could be 20, 30, 40 minutes, or even an hour, because of the 911 calls that get the priority. And unfortunately, they'll jump in front of these 301 calls. So that's a major red flag. The fact that they're being closed within minutes, I think that circles it, that brings everything together. And to me, that just completely puts a stamp on it. Like, we got a major problem here. And right?
I mean, yeah, so all of these things, right? It's all open, they're objective, right? Could the 311 complaints and the fact that they're being closed out stem from the pressure at the top to close these out and the lack of manpower and their inability to respond to those jobs because the precincts are diminished? Very possible. Very possible, right? Could the lieutenant who's saying that he showed up pretending to be the police commissioner be lying? Possible. Could the person that I spoke with say that he was pretending to be the police commissioner perceive the situation wrong? Possible. Could the March program really have been a bad thing? Possible. Could Cure program be good and work? Possible. Was Ray Martin and James Caban unassociated from Eric Adams and the police commissioner? Possible. Did Ray Martin do anything wrong? I don't know. Why was he fired? Could the bar owner be lying? Okay, if so, why was he fired and why did Ed Caban step down? So the thing that where I see is I believe everybody's innocent until proven guilty. Everybody. Even men that I don't like, I believe everybody's given due process, even though Eric Adams doesn't give anybody else due process but he takes an excessive amount of due process. I think it's important that we step out of it and say, well, we don't have all the facts. We don't have all the facts. We don't. We just know what was reported. We know the timeline's off. We know the media doesn't report. They're not even the media anymore. They're really not. They're really not. We are the media now. You're the media now. You people in this chat, you're the media. We're the media. They're not the media. You put on that local TV show, nobody's going to put a timeline together like how we just put it together. And we're not doing it for any other reason other than people have too weak memories and they forget what the hell's happened. So Eric Adams always says, where there's smoke, there isn't always fire. Refuting what longtime NYPD Chief of Internal Affairs, Charles Campisi used to say, where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, I lean more with Eric Adams. I say where there isn't always fire where there's smoke. But there's smoke everywhere. There's smoke starting back from the removal of that March program. There's smoke when then talking about the March program and Cure, but you relate it to this Operation Padlock of this marijuana enforcement. You're like, wait, what's going on? And why are all these same people intertwined in the enforcement and the making of these rules and who's getting the enforcement and who's not? And there's tons of allegations just around that. Now we have the whole influence peddling scandal, which has been going on for over a decade, involving all of the same people. And Eric Adams then took those people and created an office and put them in charge of it. And then they're in charge with the same people that they're in business with, and they're in business with their brother and their sister. And those people are in charge of the NYPD, or they're in charge of City Hall. And when you look at all of it, I'm only left to say, I don't know that that's exactly what's happening. But in my opinion, this mirrors a crime family. This mirrors a criminal enterprise. What I see, I'm blown away by. And I guarantee if I had investigative access, it wouldn't have took as long as it took.
So, listen, I agree with you. I got to piggyback and say, what, John's right. Everyone deserves due process. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly. And everyone deserves to be innocent until proven guilty. But when you look back and you start to create a timeline we're doing right now, you have to say, okay, all the signs are there and all the red flags are there. Just like when someone finds out someone's cheating on them and they look back and they go, oh, okay. All the signs were there. My man or my woman looks, turns their phone around, is always looking at their phone in private. Things didn't add up. And then, someone finds out, hey, someone's cheating on you. And then when you look back, right, someone looks back, oh, wow, all the signs were there. It's the same thing here. All the signs are there, and it's a compounded amount of red flags. We could peel back these layers. Wait a minute. Just looking at the Ray Martin incident, if it was isolated to itself, it could say, okay, that could happen. That could be an allegation. If you have an issue with the 301s, that could happen. But when you start to put all this together, it's like stew. You stir this together. We have all the ingredients of a corruption operation. Again, these are allegations, innocent until proven guilty. But to me, the preponderance of evidence is there. It's a lot of information. Again, if this person's lying, if this other person's lying, if everybody's lying, sure. But is everybody lying? Who's lying here? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't put full stock into the 301 system. There are, I used to audit the 301 system myself as a special operations lieutenant. And unfortunately, you do get some EDPs that made 301 complaints. So if you're active retired, you don't want to talk about EDP, emotionally disturbed person. Get some crazy people. But we would decipher through that. I would decipher, okay, this is Miss Smith. I know it is. That's the lady down the block, on Webster Avenue. She's always complaining about the same thing. It doesn't matter how many times you go over there. It's 1,000 times. She said there's some guy in her shower, and obviously there's nobody there. Some other lady that has dementia. You do get those type of complaints. But that is something that we could easily solidify and validate and explain when we do an audit. Say, hey, these particular 5 complaints, making these 301s, they have 100 complaints, but they're all the same complaint. This person is not of sound mind, to show how you're taking it seriously. But for this here, to say that these are answered within minutes and surrounded with all the allegations that we have, the appearance of impropriety is there, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. We have all the ingredients and all the inner lining and all the makings of a corruption operation. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and then when you look at the Precinct CO, you're like, all right, well, there's a lot of stuff about this guy, Anuti Castillo, right? And you're like, well, he's the commanding officer, he's the boss. What happens against bosses? You have, if you're pushing down work, people are going to complain about you. You possibly could be involved in frivolous lawsuits and complaints from the community. You're never going to satisfy everybody, right? It's like, oh, I called 311, they didn't do anything. He must be guilty. He must be involved, right? So, but like a lot of the stuff that I hear about the 3-4 is weird. Like supposedly he was obsessed with controlling information and how the investigations happen. So much so that allegedly he took the FIO office out of the detective squad, FIO Field Intelligence Office. Traditionally, when I was the FIO, I had my own office where I could keep things under lock and key, confidential information, confidential informants, buy money, whatever needed to be in there, whatever information we were working on, right? Because we're protecting lives of our confidential informants as well as other information from whistleblowers and things of that nature. So they were in the squad and they get moved down to basically have a desk wide open in front of everyone. So how do you meet with CIs? How do you control your information? You only have it secured in your desk. Very scary, weird thing that would happen, right? And so when you look at all this again, that appearance is there. That appearance is there. I personally don't care how the investigations turn out. It doesn't matter to me. What I see, I can't help but see. And what I see is an allegation came out from a bar owner. The person that he gave clear, irrefutable evidence that he was involved in an extortion racketeering scheme. The person that he said he spoke to was immediately fired upon the report coming out. That person had close ties to Eric Adams. The organization he reached out to was an organization to supposedly help businesses that Eric Adams put into place. And right after that, the NYPD police commissioner resigns. Something's not right. Something's not right. So where there's smoke, there's not always fire. But how about when there's plumes of smoke and it's everywhere? So when you look at this timeline of all of that, I was teetering on doing Eric Adams' crime family or NYPD Extortion Racket. But I think I think honestly, really what we labeled it out is a New York City Hall racketeering and peddling influencing extortion racket. And that's what it appears to be. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. Unfortunately, I don't believe I am.
Well, in order for this operation to be carried out, we need multiple layers involved, right? There has to be a lot of players involved. The commanding officer has to actually front these 301 calls and has to deflect them, and actually has to be in front of this to actually monitor that. Special operational lieutenant, I told you they could be unknowingly or knowingly involved. And, unfortunately, same thing for the police officers. But when it comes to the commanding officers, they have to be involved in this. There's no doubt about it. And working your chain up into city government along, with Eric Adams' administration, there has to be major players involved for this operation to be carried out. To me, the most striking, damning evidence by this whole thing, and what really wraps things together for me, and I think at this point, you just mentioned it, for me, what really solidified this was two things. James Caban having a security detail, having full access to the police department, and Ray Martin being fired immediately, to me, were two major red flags in this corruption operation. Why? Why was Ray Martin fired? If there was no teeth to this corruption probe and there was no appearance of impropriety and these allegations were not weighed on the scale to have the preponderance evidence that it happened, more likely it happened than it didn't, why was Ray Martin terminated? Why was he terminated so quickly? He was terminated within I think it was within a day or two. He was terminated right away. And shortly thereafter, say it was about a week later, Ed Caban stepped down. To me, that's the major red flag. Why was he terminated so fast? And was he paid to not say anything? Because we haven't heard anything from Ray Martin. He has not spoke about it since. That's a major red flag.
And for those of you that don't know, like when you're the police commissioner or you're in a high-ranking position, there is unfortunately a lot of mental illness throughout this country, and especially in New York City. You're a high-profile figure. So allegations come in about the police commissioner almost every day to all these agencies. The police commissioner, like insane things. Like the police commissioner has children tied up in his basement and he's working through a tunnel in his basement. And it's like, so there's numerous allegations that happen. There's numerous lawsuits that come out, right? We've seen that traditionally throughout time. You a high profile figure, you're in charge, so you're going to be named in things you have no idea about. You're like, I don't even know what that is. Well, too bad. You're the police commissioner. You're supposed to know what it is. Even if reasonable people know that you don't know, you're still going to be named it, right? Like it is what it is. So the fact that the resignation comes from that allegation, the fact that the termination of a longtime associate of Eric Adams comes from that termination, that shows a lot. And if you remember, when they were pushing the 311 system too, there was a time prior to this coming out that they didn't even want the cops handling the 311s anymore. They said that the supervisors had to do that. Why? Why is that? Because you control what happens through the supervisors, but you can't control all of these cops. You don't know if you're going to get a whistleblower. And traditionally, the upper echelon beats up on the supervisors, right? And the higher you go, the more you're stripped of your manhood, and they emasculate you further and further and further. For you to be an effective supervisor, you basically are neutered at that point. In the eyes of this administration, anyway. So it wasn't always the case, but in the eyes of this administration, you had to get neutered, whether you're a man or a woman, removed of any form of masculinity whatsoever, any form of actual supervision, any form of investigative skills, any form of integrity, any form of competence. And now, you're going to go out and you're going to answer those 311 calls. But hey, make sure at this location, because his brother's part owner in that, or I don't want to hear it at the community council meeting or whatever it is, lay off that location, but let's hammer these other ones.